Content recapping a conference or providing your takeaways from a conference is a powerful multi-purpose tool. It's great for thought leadership purposes, but it's also great for client service purposes. I'm going to give you 7 tips for creating recaps and takeaways content that's so relevant, valuable, and compelling to your clients and prospects that they can't help but pass it along. First is a mindset tip. Approach any conference that you're contemplating writing a recap for or takeaways about with a me and or them mindset. There are going to be things discussed at a conference that are more relevant to you than your target audience, and there are going to be things that are more relevant to your target audience than to you. Understand that there's 2 tracks of information you're going to consume and 2 primary purposes of a conference. What can help you do your job better, and what can help your clients do their jobs better, run their businesses better, perform better in their roles. If you keep in mind these 2 tracks that are normally parallel, but sometimes they intersect with each other, you'll better be able to quickly determine whether the content you're hearing is something that should register in your mind for your own purposes or something that should register in your mind for a takeaways, recaps, content purposes. Second, use the OK So framework when describing what you saw. When you are recapping what happened at a panel presentation or a keynote presentation or some other substantive presentation at a conference, use the OK So framework. First, provide an overview of the panel or of the presentation, including who the attendees were, give some background about their positions, their roles at their companies. That's the O. Then the K is giving 3 key points from the panel or the other presentation that's relevant to the target audience. Keep it to 3 because you don't want to get lost in details. And then finally, the so is the so what. Include why your target audience should care about what you just said. This is key. This is how you connect to the audience that you'll be sending your takeaway or your recap to. It shows that you understand what's important to them. It shows that you are trying to connect the dots between what is important to them and what you just heard at this conference and why it's important to them and perhaps even what action they should take because of it. Third, brevity beats bulk. In this kind of content where you're recapping a conference, you're delivering your takeaways from a conference, your content should be structured to be consumed easily. You're not giving a transcript of the event. You're trying to keep things punchy and easily digestible. So let's keep our paragraphs and sections short. Let's use bullet points. Now, this can be a challenge because it could be hard to distill down everything that you want to say and think you have to say into concise language. But that's the point here. This is a takeaways document, a recaps document. Maybe it provides substance that you can cover later on in future thought leadership content. But for the purposes of a takeaways or a recap document, let's keep things short and sweet and concise. Doesn't mean they should be fluffy, doesn't mean you can't deliver value, but think about creating this content in a way that's going to be easily digested by your clients, your prospects, and hopefully the people that they pass on your recaps or your takeaways content to. Fourth, give your audience access to materials that you thought were particularly valuable and compelling at the conference. Even if you don't reference the materials in depth in your takeaways or your recap, if you found a document that could be interesting to your target audiences, to the people who are receiving your recaps, your takeaways, link to it in your document and note why you're sharing it, what about it you found so interesting, and why you think they should find it interesting as well. Just because they weren't at the conference doesn't mean they can't get the benefit of presentations and other materials that were shared at the conference. You're providing your takeaways and a recap in this document. You might as well also provide additional documents that you think could be of relevance and value to the people receiving the recap and the takeaways. Fifth, include a section about the vibes of the conference. I don't see this very often, but this is how you show expertise and authority to your readers, to the people who are consuming your recaps, takeaways document. This is purely subjective, but you want to give the big picture. What were people talking about in between sessions, at lunch, at the happy hour, in the hallways, whatever? What was the mood of the crowd? Was it jubilant? Was it dour? Was it slightly optimistic? Share anecdotes. Of course, anonymizing the people that you're quoting, but you could imagine sharing an anecdote like, I talked with a COO of a manufacturing company, and she made a point to note that XYZ. This is where you show that you have your fingers on the pulse of the industry or the topic that the conference is serving or is revolving around. You're also trying to take your audience, take the readers of this content and put them in the exhibit hall next to you and almost be their guide and translator. Like you're showing them, hey, this is what was happening behind the scenes. This is what people were saying when the presentations were not going on. Sixth, be creative with your title. You can use the word takeaways or the word recap in the title, but try to be a bit more creative than just saying 5 takeaways from XYZ conference. Distill down what you're about to talk about to one theme that catches the reader's eye in the form of your headline. That's why you might want to write the headline after you've written the first draft of the document. So you have a sense of exactly where your document is going. But think about it. If you were an executive for a healthcare company, would you rather read an article that said 5 takeaways from the XYZ conference? Or would you rather read an article that said 5 takeaways from the XYZ conference that every healthcare industry executive needs to know to prosper in the next 12 months? Seventh, and finally, timeliness. You've probably heard this before, but it bears repeating, that you have to balance getting out your recaps content, your takeaways content relatively quickly, let's say within a week after the conference is wrapped, but don't do it so fast that you don't have time to think and to write this content well and to write it in a way that's relevant, valuable, and compelling. Just like thought leadership regarding developments in cases or new legislation or regulatory agency action, you don't need to be the first one to publish. You don't need to be the one to break the news. You just need to be the one who best connects what happened at the conference with what is of interest to your target audiences. And that requires a little bit of thought and a little bit of time. If you would prefer to not rush out a conference recap, conference takeaways document, great, but make sure you get it out within about 7 days after the conference is over. After that, it's going to be a bit stale and won't be as impactful or interesting to your target audiences. Thought leadership content recapping a conference or delivering takeaways from a conference is a ridiculously effective multi-purpose tool. Obviously, it has thought leadership impact and can be a key part of your thought leadership efforts by positioning you in the market as knowledgeable and wise and an expert and an authority regarding the subject matter of the conference. But it's also an effective tool for client service. It helps educate your clients regarding developments in their industry, developments in the topic covered by the conference, and is another way to position you in real time as the go-to attorney for their legal and business issues. The thing is, conference takeaways and conference recap documents are fairly common, but if you follow these 7 tips, you'll be creating uncommon ones that resonate with your clients and prospects and compel them to pass your recap along to their colleagues. If you're interested in learning more thought leadership best practices, check out lawfirmeditorialservice.com. We have more than 500 videos, blog posts, and podcast episodes full of thought leadership best practices.